Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran of the Jews of God's prayers. We're still reading from Surah Al-Fath. In the last session, we spoke about the notion of bay'ah, the pledge that the believers pledge to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this was like a commentary on verse 10. So we jumped to another verse, and we'll go to still to Surah At-Tawbah for another verse on Tawbah. First of all, just as a reminder of verse 10 about the bay'ah. أعوذ بالله السميع من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الذين يبايعونك إنما يبايعون الله يد الله فوق أيديهم فمن نكث فإنما ينكث على نفسه ومن أوفى بما عاهد عليه الله فسيؤتيه أجرا عظيما. Surely those who pledge allegiance to you, addressing the Prophet ﷺ, are actually pledging allegiance to Allah. Allah's hand is over there. Theirs, again, it should be understood allegorically, for nothing is like unto him. Whenever an anthropomorphic verse like this is recited, then we should immediately resort to allegorical interpretation for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just so that people will understand that He does not have anything that is three-dimensional, four-dimensional in terms of if we add time, the fourth dimension. Whoever breaks their pledge, فَمَنْ نَكَثَ فَإِنَّمَا يَنكُثُ نَفْسَهُ. Whoever breaks their pledge, it will be to their own loss, to their own ruin, and whoever fulfills their pledge to Allah, He will grant them a great reward. Verse 111 of Surah At-Tawbah. إن الله اشترى المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة يقاتلون في سبيل الله فيقتلون ويقتلون وعدا عليه حقا في التوراة والإنجيل والقرآن ومن أوفى بعهده من الله فاستبشروا ببيعكم الذي بايعتم به وذلك هو الفوز العظيم. Allah has indeed purchased from the believers their lives and wealth in exchange for paradise. But it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who granted them everything, their life and everything else. They fight in the cause of Allah, or kill or get killed. This is a true promise binding on him, on Allah, in the Torah, in the Gospel, and the Qur'an, and whose promise is truer than Allah's. So rejoice in the exchange you have made with him. Exchange, that is truly the ultimate triumph. اسْتَبْشِرُوا بِبَيْعِكُمْ. The pledge. So the true pledge, and we spoke about this in the previous session, the true pledge is between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the believers. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say, اشترى المؤمنين أنفسهم, that's through revelation, and when the pledge takes place, it did take place in Bayat Ridwan. The believers pledged to the Prophet ﷺ their allegiance. That's Bay'ah. And it continued when, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, there was a meeting in the shed of Bani Sa'ida. And the Ansar, and of course we talk about the leaders, not everyone. The leaders of the community got together, and ultimately Abu Bakr and Umar, who went there, Abu Bakr wanting Umar to be the head of state, the Caliph, Khalifa. But Umar told him at one point, we can go over the details. This is a down-to-earth process in the sense of people, some leaders from the Ansar wanted this for themselves, and ultimately Umar al-Khattab, just to cut things short, and it is a political move. He asked Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to extend his hand, and he pledged to him the bay'ah, and then everybody else followed suit. This is the moment also that the Shiites they interpret this moment as taking away from Ali bin Abi Talib, who was really taking care of preparing the Prophet ﷺ for burial. They believe that he was entitled, that the Prophet ﷺ assigned Ali as a Khalifa, as a Caliph, head of state. And then later on they developed the notion that this leadership should have remained in the offspring of Ali bin Abi Talib, some 12 Imams from his that's the 12th Imamites, and the Ismailis believe in 7 Imams they split rather than 12 Imams. And right at the very beginning, there was nothing theologically different. There was nothing juridically different right at the beginning. It was simply It should have been Ali rather than Abu. For the Sunnites, who continue to be the majority, maybe around 90% of the world population, Muslim population, it is meritorious. It's not that the Prophet ﷺ did not really appoint anyone, though it is understood that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the first man to accept Islam, who offered literally all his wealth, who accompanied the Prophet ﷺ in the migration, ثاني اثنين هم في الغار, whom the Prophet ﷺ asked him to lead the Muslims in prayer as Imam when the Prophet ﷺ was very sick towards the end of his life. So all in all, the signs are out there. But again, for the Sunnites, it's meritorious, though one should not really belittle the Ahlul Bayt. Never. That's deen. That's deen. That's basically. So there's a certain love, there's a certain respect, but it's love, respect, and really recognizing their status in Islam. These are two things in the sense of no leadership. If we talk about two equivalent people in every respect, except that one of them is from Al Bayt, then definitely the Al Bayt, I believe, should be the leader in that sense. So again, here we have the notion of اسْتَبْشِرُوا بَيْعَكُمْ الَّذِي بَايَعْتُم بِهِ. Now the narrative, going back to Surah Al-Fatih, the narrative shifts to from the believers who pledged allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. And by the way, of course, the notion of Ali pledging allegiance, the bay'ah, continued in Islamic history, even when we talk about the end of the caliphate as a pan-Islamic political system. The bay'ah continues to be there, and even Islamic movements, they use this, and not all Islamic movements, but also Sufis have a pledge. I witnessed once a Sufi order from the northern part of Palestine. They came to Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they had a pledge to their Sufi masters, specific Sufi order. They connected physically amongst themselves, and there was a smaller group of women from the same Sufi order, and they connected to the larger group through a cane, like a staff, and they pledged allegiance, and they did recite this verse 10 of Surah Al-Fatih, الَّذِينَ بَيَعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يَبَيْعُونَ اللَّهَ يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Now to those who did not join them, those who stayed behind. سيقول لك المخلفون من الأعراب أموالنا وأهلنا فاستغفر لنا يقولون بألسنتهم ما ليس في قلوبهم قل فمن يملك لكم من الله شيئا إن أراد بكم ضرا أو أراد بكم نفعا بل كان الله بما تعملون خبيرا. The nomadic Arabs who stayed behind will say to you, addressing the Prophet ﷺ, they will say to you, we were preoccupied with our wealth and families, so ask for forgiveness for us. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. They say with their tongues what is not in their hearts. Say, O Prophet, say, who then can stand between you and Allah in any way, if He intends harm or benefit for you? In fact, Allah is all aware of what you do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala verily knows. He is omniscient. So this addressing the Prophet ﷺ by those who stayed behind. Al-A'rab, those nomads. You have the Bedouins who live in the desert. You have those Bedouins, once they moved to the edge of Medina, they are not really city dwellers, but they are almost like in between. That's my understanding. But that's they have been described. Of course, doesn't mean that every one of them is the same. But there's more than one place in the Qur'an. There's at least one place where Al-Arab ashaddu kufran wa nifaqa. Those nomads were more hypocritical compared to others, and even when they disbelieve, it's the same. Now the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them what was in their heart. بل ظننتم أن لن ينظرون إلى أهلهم أبدا وزين ذلك في قلوبكم وظننتم ظن السوء وكنتم قوما بورا. The truth is, you thought that the messenger and the believers would never return to their families again, that they will get killed. This is why, simply, as hypocrites, they did not join the community, not join the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. And that was made appealing in your hearts. You harbored evil thoughts. ظن السوء وظننتم ظن السوء. You harbored evil thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so became a doomed people. You became a doomed people. وَكُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا بُورًا. Usually when we use the word bur, the land when it's doesn't have any vegetation, doesn't have any trees, no greens, no. When it's not fit for agriculture, when it's arid land, we call it ard bur, as if their hearts are not good for to plant the seeds of faith. Their hearts are arid, and that's very dangerous state. وَمَنْ لَمْ يُؤْمِنْ إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ سَعِيرًا. And whoever does not believe in Allah and His Messenger, then we surely have prepared for the disbelievers a blazing fire. وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَغْفِرُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. The problem with those who stayed behind, they wanted the reward without really the putting the effort. When they see that things have changed, they flip. سَيَقُولُونَ تَأْخُذُوهَا ذَرُونَا نَتَّبِعْكُمْ يريدون أن يبدلوا كلام الله قل لن تتبعونا كذلكم قال الله من قبل سيقولون بل تحسدوننا بل كانوا لا يفقهون إلا قليلا. Those who stayed behind will say, when you believers set out to take the spoils of war, let us accompany you. They wish to change Allah's promise. To change Allah's promise, those who pledged allegiance at Hudaybiyah were promised by Allah that the spoils of war obtained from the tribe of Khaybar would be exclusively theirs. He divided it exclusively amongst them. Say, addressing the Prophet ﷺ, you will not say to them, قُلْ لَن تَتَّبِعُونَ. You will not accompany us. This is what Allah has said before. They will then say, in fact, you are driven by jealousy against us. The truth is, they can hardly comprehend. Meaning you only say so to deprive us of our share. That's the only thing that they care about. قل للمخلفين من الأعراب ستدعون إلى قوم أولي بأس شديد تقاتلونهم أو يسلمون فإن تطيعوا يؤتكم الله أجرا حسنا وإن تتولوا كما توليتم من قبل يعذبكم عذابا أليما. You'll have another chance. Say to the nomadic Arabs who stayed behind, you will be called to fight against the people of great might. This is reference to the tribes of Hawazin and Thaqif. They were two pagan Arab tribes who will fight unless they submit. If you then obey, Allah will grant you a fine reward. But if you turn away as you did before, not accompanying the Prophet ﷺ, He will inflict upon you a painful punishment. So they will have another chance. But a hypocrite is a hypocrite. Those who are excused, not those nomadic Arabs who lied about being busy with their wealth and families. ليس على أعمى حرج. There is no blame on the blind. ولا على الأعرج حرج. Or disabled. Disabled, of course, it covers so many states, but al-a'raj is somebody who's limping. At least one of the legs is not functioning normally. But it's basically anyone who is disabled, of course. ولا على المريض حرج. Or the sick. And all of these three and others who also have legitimate excuses for staying behind. And whoever obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يدخله جنات تجري من تحت الأنهار ومن يتولى يعذبه عذابا أليما. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will be admitted by Him into gardens under which rivers flow. But whoever turns away will be subjected by Him to a painful punishment. Now we are back to verse 18 about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being pleased with the believers who pledge allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ under the tree. لقد رضي الله عن المؤمنين إذ يبايعونك تحت الشجرة بهم فأنزل السكينة عليهم وأثابهم فتحا قريبا. Indeed, Allah was pleased with the believers when they pledged allegiance to you, addressing the Prophet ﷺ under the tree. He knew what was in their hearts, so He sent down serenity, instilled this tranquility, this calmness, this peace upon them, in them, and rewarded them with a victory at hand. That victory that followed basically the pledge, the conquest of Khaybar in the year 7 after the Hijrah, around 628 of Common Era. So فتحا قريب ومغانم كثيرة يأخذونها وكان الله عزيزا حكيما. And many spoils of war they will gain, for Allah is Almighty, all-wise. وعدكم الله مغانم كثيرة تأخذونها فعجل لكم هذه وكف أيدي الناس عنكم ولتكون آية للمؤمنين ويهديكم صراطا مستقيما. Allah has promised you believers abundant spoils which you will gain. So He has sent this truth for you, and He has held people's hands back from harming you. so it may be a sign for the believers, and so He may guide you along the straight path. وَكَفَّ أَيْدِيَ النَّاسِ عَنْكُمْ, all in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The protection comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything. يقدر عليها قد أحاط الله بها وكان الله على كل شيء قديرا. And there are other gains which are beyond your reach that Allah is keeping in store for you. For Allah is most capable of everything, omnipotent. Inshallah, we'll continue beginning with verse 22 in the next session. The theme is still the same. It's about really defending the Muslims against at the time, against the polytheists of the Arabian Peninsula. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.